All right. Hello, my name is Vincent, and this is my presentation on improvements needed for bike infrastructure at Case and, the surrounding areas. I believe that biking on campus and in the circle in general is not as safe as it could be. There are improvements that Case and the local government can take to improve the safety and of not just the bikers, but everybody using the space. Thankfully, this is not the first time that it's been brought up, and unfortunately, it's also not likely to be the last time it's brought up. So, there has been some things already done. Currently, there is a mix of shared use lanes that require bikers to bike in the same lane as cars, doesn't generally designated by a bike symbol as seen here in the share the road. There's also some more dedicated bike lanes that have our little small lanes designated for bicycles only. However, as shown in this picture right here, cars and trucks don't generally follow it and will just treat it like an extension of their lane, so it's not really enough. Many drivers also share the notion that bikes and bikers really have no business being on the road and will act hostile towards them by beeping, honking, screaming, that kind of stuff. This leads to bikers really not feeling safe on the road, and that can lead to crashes with bikes, crashes with non moving things, as bikers having to be careful of something like this. This graph here shows the percentages of reported crashes when either biking, walking, or driving. As seen, bike collision with vehicles is the highest percentage of crashes for bikers and second highest after pedestrian and car collisions. One might gather or assume that, oh, cars are the problem here. They're clearly causing so much issues on the road with collisions. However, I'd like to point that it might be due to the insufficient manner of which drivers are taught about bikes and how to deal with them, and the simple difference in size. The smallish 30-ish pound bike offers no protection from a 2-ton car during a collision, no matter how small it might be. This lack of infrastructure turns many away from using bikes, and for those who are using bikes to get around, that gives them more stress than they otherwise would have. As shown here, we have an example of the perception of how long you're biking by facility type. So for Euclid, which I designate as a high stress street due to the many obstacles, including drivers, potholes, broken glass, and other factors, it causes you to, even when you're biking a mile or less than, if you're going from the dorms to the engineering quad, feel like it's so much more of a long time because you are being stressed out by having to check for all these different variables in your area while trying to bike as well. While there are many solutions for this and many have been made, if, for example, elevated pathways for either pedestrians or bikes seems like a really cool idea. But I have an idea that hopefully I believe to work well when considering every user of the space, cars and bikers alike. I plan on improving biking conditions for much of what is seen on the map. However, the main focus is going to be on the immediate Case campus and the University Circle area, which is highlighted in red here. A legitimate option is to start from ground zero and rebuild and reconstruct the roads for biking potential. It's very unlikely to happen in this area. Major factors such as Severance Hall or the major businesses and industry on Euclid means that much of the road needs to be dedicated for cars and other vehicles. But I'm going to try to do a few things that I believe will hopefully help the entire situation. In red, our roads I believe have the highest priority that to implement protected bike lanes. These roads are major connecting factors for the area and allow for travelers to use them without and get where they need to be without much issue, and they don't disrupt the typical flow of traffic too terribly much and would allow for them to be implemented. In orange is the medium priority, as these are roads that I feel that could definitely benefit from the implementation of bike roads and definitely could use it in certain areas, but starting out of the gate are not super important. The main orange strip is East Boulevard, which is the road you see on the left. This runs all the way from I-90 down to University Circle and then continues on for a little bit further. This, while it shares many of the distance with MLK, it has a distinct advantage over MLK for protected bike lanes in that its usage. East Boulevard is not nearly as popular to drive on as MLK. MLK is like the main road, and you have the scenic view going all the way. Well, yes, that would be amazing for bicycles and would give a lot to look at, given that people in their cars generally aren't looking out for things. It doesn't allow for it, the roads are too narrow for this to happen. There's old bridges and old construction that cannot be changed for this reason. So East Boulevard is the better road to go through. Finally, in yellow are roads that I deem to be the lowest priority. Not lowest as in not important, but just not as important as the other two. These roads are roads that connect the other roads together or are places that already have shared use paths. For example, inside of the Wade Oval, there's shared use paths that circle around the oval, and it's unlikely that a dedicated protected bike lane is super necessary there. You may have noticed that Euclid Avenue has not been marked down with any priority. This is intentional, as Euclid kind of breaks all the priorities that I kind of set up. While yes, it would be red for a high priority street, given that is a major central hub for much things. There's food, there's schools, there's businesses, there's hospitals. It's a huge road. However, given that there is hospitals on this road, means that space needs to be dedicated for the cars, and that means we can't just put in protected bike lanes just like that and remove a lane. This requires expert planning, and the road needs to be expanded and other things need to happen. So, and that's very unlikely to happen overnight. So, as of right now, Euclid kind of is baby steps because while everything is better to be added to it, it's not completely perfect. So, it would be kind of important to know like, what will people benefit from this plan? Why are we putting in bike lanes? Well, besides the general public using the protected bike lanes to get around, CASE and CIM students are also a huge population that would be using these paths. Given that many students don't own a car or bring it to campus, given the fees, other forms of transportation are relied upon. With the new protected lanes, students would be able to travel faster to and from class and allow for better transportation if they want to go get something to eat or go visit other areas in Cleveland. Given that the train and buses generally have places for you to bring your bike on, it allows for bikers to be more interconnected with the entirety of Cleveland. This helps reduce on during normal years travel times as then students are able to get from class to class together as when they are not all online, they have to get from one side of the campus to another in like 15 minutes, when even when walking it would be about 20 minutes speed walking, or trying to rely on a bus that sometimes isn't exactly the most reliable thing in the world. So there are things that can be done to make it better. Another thing that is improved upon is as more students start, biking, is the idea of power in numbers. As angry or as frustrated as drivers might be to see a bike in the road taking up what they believe to be their space, um, no one with a rational mind is going to drive into groups of bikers. That is something that there's really no rational defense to. So, as more students bike and as students and other people use these lanes and use the streets for getting around, there's a sort of power in numbers feel as the public sees, oh, it looks like these bike lanes are actually very useful. There's people on it a lot. So that helps warm up the public's opinion, gets them to approve new roads, and gets them to more likely to sign off on forms and vote for these changes for better bike lanes and better infrastructure for the area. But more on a personal level, biking also helps reduce stress, especially when in these protected bike lanes. As students and riders alike don't need to worry about the cars riding up on them, they don't need to worry about seeing, oh, Am I safe to start biking, or is there a car that's going to swing their door at me? They don't need to worry about as many potholes or broken glass, as the streets will then be cleaner due to the new construction. This reduction in stress also comes in with health benefits. Riding a bike is a physical activity and does take a lot of work. It's not something that is super easy. Given that, we have access to the Den or Uptown for all our fast food needs, biking helps add a little bit of added exercise to our daily commute. Instead of taking a shuttle or bus, we can, bike from place to place to hopefully feel safe enough to do so. These health benefits overall will improve your body, and help, maintain a better sense of health, overall health. However, everything comes at a cost. Nothing is free. So, just from the addition of about 5 miles of protected bike lanes, this is really only included in the general University Circle area with slight outwards bits. That gets us to around $115,000 for just for the material for the bike lane alone. This doesn't include construction costs, zoning, planning, painting, maintenance costs, is anything like that. It's just the upfront price. And that isn't even including Euclid. If we wanted to include Euclid, which is a whole other thing, that would be looking at additional $130,000 per mile for road extensions that are necessary due to the type of traffic that is on Euclid. So it's quite expensive for a simple change, because when factoring all those together, it's approaching $1 million at just base costs alone. Further expense is then also added when we have to consider hospitals. Emergency vehicles need vehicle lanes. There is no ifs, thens, or buts about it. You can't exactly expect ambulance to be turned into a bike and go on that. And it would be unsafe for a ambulance to go down a bike lane, even while yes, it would be theoretically possible if necessary. It is not safe overall. So lanes need to be kept for the emergency vehicles to go through to their various locations. And given that this area is a hub for our medical stuff, means that roads and places need to be kept open, which means Euclid cannot have that sacrifice of losing a lane to bike lanes. So that's where that 130 grand per mile comes from, where the road gets slowly and slightly expanded upon to provide that extra room for bikers and other forms of transport, while still allowing for cars to drive by and emergency vehicles to get past. So it's not exactly cheap. However, I believe if this plan is slowly implemented over time, it can and will improve the well being of everybody in the area. Bikers have a safe form of transportation to get all across the area. When the plan would be fully set and finished, people would be able to get all the way from downtown to University Circle up to the lake again, all on their bike, without having to worry about cars breathing down their neck or drivers being angry at them for taking up their spot. Pedestrians wouldn't have to worry about bikers weaving in and out of their out of their walking paths, and drivers wouldn't have to worry about them weaving in or out of traffic or having as many collisions as mentioned before. And overall, for the general health, American infrastructure is failing. It was built in the 50s and 60s and really has not had many and much improvements from it since then. So, with this addition of the bike lanes, it will provide an opportunity to update and renew the infrastructure for everything in the area. So it takes that from our old styles and adds in that new technology to bring us into the modern age, which will be beneficial for everybody. Thank you.